What's up guys, Carboss here, back in another video. Just doing a clip right now to talk about my 9 pieces of Power 9 for Magic the Gathering. And just want to document down the story behind each of these pieces and how they came to be. And man, I'm gonna see these guys go, man. Gosh, this is difficult, man. Cut. What's up YouTube, Carboss here, back in another video where we talk about cards, money, investing. And today's video is a very special video. It's non-sports, non-Marvel, and goes back to my roots of Magic the Gathering. Throughout the course of my channel, I've explained my backstory a couple of times about my Magic the Gathering roots, where I was a player for a good part of 20 years. So it was kind of natural that my first investing play would be of Magic the Gathering, and this started in late 2016, where I was investing in modern format cards. Now, I'm not going to explain what that exactly means, but basically, I was speculating on certain key cards which I felt will be relevant in the coming years of play. So I kind of like invested in these cards due to their playability, their scarcity, and these weren't really like high-end cards, right? We're talking about between $10 to $100 range, but I bought in multiple quantities of them, right? But subsequently, I kind of level up, into dealing with the reserve list cards. If you haven't heard about this, do look them up. And mainly the revised dual lands and other key reserve list cards like the Library of Alexandria, Mistra's Workshop, and the Gaia's Cradle. Now, my viewers from sports and Marvel may not recognize those names, right? But you guys should be familiar with the famous Power 9. And the Power 9 represents the 9 most powerful cards in the game, which were printed in initial sets of Magic back in 1993, i.e. the Alpha and the Beta edition. The Alpha edition, which from its name meant the first, was released back in 1993, printed around 1100 copies of each card, while the Beta had 3 times the printing at 3300 per card. But if you compare this to any mass-produced cards, be it TCG, Sports, or Marvel, these printed numbers are kind of peanuts, right? And a lot of these alpha cards were used as demos back then and were either lost or destroyed, and hence the population of these are extremely rare. Now, beta, on the other hand, while not as rare as the alphas, they were indeed heavily played in players' decks, so it is kind of a challenge to locate beta edition cards which are in pristine condition or gem mint. Hence, it's a goal of Magic OG guys, right, such as myself, to put together a set of Power 9, be it in alpha or beta, in the best condition possible. So I had those ambitions, and through time, a lot of hard work, I was able to accumulate these Power 9 for myself. So here's the story of each one of these pieces. What's up YouTube, Carboss here, back in another video. What I have in front of me here is my collection of 9 pieces of the coveted Power 9 from Beta edition, right? As you can see roughly here, these are all gold labels, which means these are all BGS 9.5 gem mints, right? And this entire clip here is going to be part of a bigger video, and the purpose of this particular clip is just to talk about the back history of these cards right here, right? So I'm just going to cover the cards quickly and just maybe talk about history, how these cards came to be, where they came from, and just a bit of prices, not in too much of a detail, okay? So the first card here I got here is Mox Ruby. This is the red mana energy, right? And this was one of the earlier cards that I bought from eBay, can you believe it or not? Back then it was actually quite safe to buy Power 9, and this was actually got from Dave & Adams card store, whereby I kind of bought my initial pieces all from Dave & Adams, and this was one of it, right? So loving the Mox here. Next up, second piece of Mox. This is the Mox Pearl, which produces the white mana energy, and this is also another piece from Dave & Adams as well. So all these grades here, including the ruby, as you can see, right, these are all basic grades, subgrades. Maybe this is the ruby is a basic plus with 10 surface, right? And this one, the pearl, is actually just a basic 9.5 with 3 9.5 subgrades and 1 9 for the centering. And a lot of them are just basic and basic plus, most of them, because I was coming in this as investing on a particular budget, and this is what I was actually gunning for. So my objective to put together this set was trying to get entire 9.5 Power 9, right, which was actually one of my life goals, right? So these are the 2 pieces of the Moxes here. I'm going to third piece here. This is the Mox Jet, and this produces the black color banner. And I purchased this from Ideal Collectibles, Tony Yamada, right? Great guy. And besides Dave and Adams, I bought a number of pieces from Tony as well, and he has been giving me good deals across the years, right? And helping me putting this entire set or entire collection together. Again, BGS 9.5 basic subgrades here with 3 9.5s and 9 4 corners, right? Loving card. Next up, also from Ideal Collectibles, this is a Mox Sapphire, produces the blue, one of the more coveted Moxes amongst the 5 here, despite not being the most expensive. The most expensive is the one I have here, right? Again, this is again the basic subs here, right? 3 9.5s and the corners, and beautiful card, right? And lastly, this is the Mox Emerald, the green one, which is the hardest one to find, surprisingly, right? And this has a little bit of backstory. So of course I purchased this one from my buddy of mine on Facebook, and this actual Mox Emerald was opened in a Grand Prix by a professional player called Ben Stark, and of course he subsequently got it graded and got a BGS 9.5 and sold it on, and I'm actually the third owner of this card. So it has some history on this particular Mox. Just loving this one, right? So it has again basic subs, 3 9.5s and 9 on centering, though I feel that this centering is kind of like, should be a 9.5 actually. But amongst all, this was the toughest to get, and this being the latest piece, or kind of like the final piece that I acquired to put together my Power 9 collection, therefore this was actually the most expensive, and I can talk about prices a bit later. So before I show the rest, just gonna put together all the Moxes here for you to have a look. So there you go, right? So the Jet, the Emerald, the Pearl, the Ruby, finally the Sapphire, right, in its glory. Alright, so let's move on to the remaining 4 pieces, right? So the Power 9 comprised of these 5 Mox gems, 3 very powerful blue cards here, and you probably might have guessed the Black Lotus, right? So I'm just going to show you the 3 blue cards first. The first up, Time Twister. Originally, this card was kind of like the lowest among all 9, but because it was commander playable at some point, you know, prices for a Time Twister actually went up, and surprisingly, it kind of overtook the prices of some of these Moxes as well. And this one was, I believe, the second piece of Power 9 that I actually acquired, and this one I got it from Ideal Collectibles as well as a completely cheap price. Funny story was, I think about a year and a half later, Tony offered to buy this card back from me at 5 times the price I paid from him, which obviously I said no, but just loving this one here. Next up, Time Walk. So this was the very first piece of Power 9 I purchased from eBay, from Dave and Adams as well. And this was the card that kind of like kick-started the journey, right? So at a point in time when I was just buying, you know, investing in reserve list cards, dual lands and stuff like that, and I saw this card on eBay, I was thinking that this is kind of like a nice piece of Power 9, something that I wanted to own in a 9.5 slab. So this was the one that I got in, and yeah, it's very nice upgrades as well, right? 10 on centering, 9 on corners, and 2 9.5s on the other 2. So BGS 9.5 basic plus. So this started the whole thing, and obviously being the first piece that I acquired in the entire set here, this was actually the cheapest. Alright, moving on. Ancestral Recall. This is one of the most powerful blue cards ever printed, right? This was also acquired from Dave and Adams, and it's a stunning card. Basics, subgrades, which is fine. Loving the card as well. And lastly, the big dog here. This is the Black Lotus. Awesome stuff. Now, one thing that's great about this Lotus that I truly enjoy is the 10 corners, right? So Magic the Gathering, even though they have rounded corners, right? So if you look at sports cards, for example, right, the corners, sharp corners means 10, right? So in this case, rounded corners, there is some flaking in some of these corners here. So to get a perfect 10 on corners is actually very hard to do, because some of this flaking doesn't come from playing. Like obviously all these cards are perhaps have never seen the tabletop play in their life. It's probably packed fresh, kept in a sleeve, kept in a holder, and they've gone for grading. But they come out cut with that kind of flaking at the side there, and that kind of affected some of the grades as well. And to get a perfect 10 on corners, this is absolutely stunning, right? And for a subgrade for this Lotus, right, you look at, when you talk about Magic the Gathering, the key subgrades that you look at is the centering, the edges, and the corners, less so on the surface. In this case, they get high marks on all the subgrades here. So this was one of the truly best specimens in my mind for a Black Lotus 9.5, and this was this was the one that's hard to see let go, right? You know, considering that one of the nicest specimens and putting together a set, right? So I'm not going to talk about that in this video. I'm going to talk about my history with Power 9s in general. Now, this is not the first set of Power 9s that I ever owned in my life, right? Back in when I was in university, I would say about like 20 odd years ago, you know, when I was playing professionally or playing, you know, heavily competitively for Magic the Gathering, I realized that I want to keep a set of Power 9s. And back then I was just a student, right? So I only could afford not a lot of money, and I decided to put together a set of unlimited Power 9s, right? And at that time, being on a budget, condition didn't really matter much. I just wanted a set of Power 9, and those days you could just put the entire set of Power 9s into your 9 pocket sheets because they were not as expensive as today. So I remember acquiring a lot of pieces for a couple $100 each, you know, 300, 200, some maybe 400. And the last piece that I actually needed was a Black Lotus, right? But I knew Black Lotus was expensive, and I couldn't find any from where I was, right? Obviously, it's not easy to acquire Black Lotus, but a buddy of mine, he actually qualified for the World Championships in Toronto, Canada. And I told him that here's some money, which was, I believe, was like 500 US dollars, maybe less, $500. And I said that please go out to the Worlds and see whether you could find for me a unlimited Lotus. Condition really didn't matter as long that it was, you know, not tear in half or whatever, right? So it didn't matter if, let's say, if the corners were really short, or you know, if there's significant yellowing. It didn't matter. I just wanted a Lotus so I could finish my Power 9 collection. He brought back a Lotus, and it had a shoe print on the back. So it had a funny story whereby that Lotus perhaps at some point in time fell on the floor and got stepped on, left an imprint on the shoe, and got sold to me. So unfortunately, I didn't keep any of the photos of that particular set, which I subsequently sold later on to fund my house renovation, my first house renovation, right? And subsequently, so I would believe about like maybe 5 to 7 years later, I actually acquired another set of unlimited Power 9, right, through the deals that I made, some big trades, right? And again, I flipped that second set of Power 9 to actually fund another big purchase, right? So this is the third set of Power 9 that I own, and I was telling myself that this will be the last, and this will keep with me for a long time, right? Because considering the hours and hours I spent in trying to acquire these pieces. These were not just, I acquired these pieces outright, right? Like, you know, I bought this stuff from Dave and Adams, I bought this stuff from Tony, but in order to build the bankroll, to build the funds to acquire all these pieces, including the Black Lotus itself, you know, it spent a lot of time flipping cards, going through collections, selling singles, buy listing cards, and just building that bankroll from just a small capital, right, to acquire all these pieces. It was such an endeavor for me. I spent a lot of hours sitting on the tabletop, just going through cards, buying through collections, buy listing cards, all right, and then finally just building equity on all the cards, right? I never took profits in my Magic the Gathering investment in my early years. Everything just went roll back into, I would say, the business, I don't know, into the project, and finally this was the outcome. So happy to document the story here, right? So loving this stuff here. And we talk about pricing, right? I'm not going to share detailed pricing, but I can tell you that the combination of all these 9 cards, considering the amount of flipping, from my start, because I documented everything. If you guys are familiar with the way I work in terms of my card investing, I document down every single purchase, every single transaction, right? And because I didn't take any profits out from my Magic the Gathering investments, so clearly whatever I spent on day one, flipping and reinvesting back, it's all back down to these 9 cards here. And I'm happy to say that the cumulative value or the cumulative cost on all these 9 cards here is under $100,000. And you probably think to yourself, hey, this Lotus itself is like 150 and you got all the others. That's true. That's a combination of all the hard work that has gone into putting together this pieces here. Some of it was obviously when I bought it in initial years, it was at a particularly cheap price, like the very first piece of Time Walk I bought from Dave Adams for, I believe, under $3,000, right? This is probably like a $10,000 or $11,000 card today, but it was under $3,000 back then. And the very first Mox that I pointed out, the Mox Ruby, was about, I think, like $5,000. So obviously this is, price has gone up, so maybe about like 12 or 15 today. But yep, so when I started out, definitely, you know, capitalize on the lower cost base back then. Magic the Gathering has since boom. It has gone up ups and downs due to the pandemic because of the lack of table play and lack of visibility, but definitely the vintage stuff such as these Power Knights will continue to remain strong forever and ever, right? I'm just happy to have held all these in my hand. The journey has been amazing, and just putting this together, documenting this for one last time before I see these guys go to move into something that's better. All right, cheers. Thanks guys for watching. This is probably going to be part of a clip of a bigger video, but just want to see this for one last time. All right, thanks guys. Cardboard's out. So you can probably tell by now, I have quite a story with this collection, and the journey in bringing all these together is something truly memorable and special. Normally, it's these kind of collection and it's stories that stick with you for a long time, you know, probably to the end of time. But there will be a time when an opportunity presents itself for you to do something different, not necessarily solely driven by financial returns, but of a combination of a different investing strategy, perhaps better liquidity, you know, some cash in a pocket for you to use. You know, all of that just checks the necessary boxes in a sound investment transaction. But the price, letting go of something that you have so much history with, the time, the sweat, the energy that you poured into to fulfill what you deem that it's a life goal, right? So the process was indeed fulfilling, but I felt the opportunity like this, you know, don't come by as often. And a lot of times in my card investing history, you know, I've seized and also passed on many great opportunities. You know, some worked out really well, some didn't. But what's constant is that I never regretted any of my investment decisions that I made. You know, naturally, I have to put aside a lot of my emotions. But, you know, while normally able to cut away emotions for every single card that I transact with, this set of Power 9 kind of latches on quite dearly, you know, just reminding me of the quest, but at the same time, you know, giving me signs that it's time to move on to a new owner. But I'm a guy who, you know, does deals, and no matter what sort of collectible it is, as long as it's not a one-of-one, there will be opportunities to acquire these pieces again. Of course, price becomes a factor, but you know, you guys get a point. For now, it's still for me to take the next step in my investing journey. And I want to shout out to Adam Chai, or Adam Kai, as some people, you know, within the high-end Magic community know him by, you know, to help broker and put this deal together. You know, at some point in the future, I will talk about the deal specifics and why I did the deal from an investment standpoint. But for now, I just want to close out this video with a positive memory of these amazing cards, right? For those who are in Magic watching this video, you probably can understand my heaviness. And for viewers from the sports and Marvel side, there will be a time when you'll be asked to part with something special. And if you come to me for advice, I can steadily tell you that I've been there. All right, like and subscribe to this channel. Thanks for following me on this journey. And thanks again for watching. Cardboard's out.